Okay, we are live. Hi, everyone. If you're tuning in, thank you for watching live. And if you're catching the replay, go ahead and comment replay below so we know that you've been catching the replay. I'm Joyce Faraj-Ardura, the founder of the Nutrition Counseling Academy and the host of the Nutrition Counseling and Coaching Facebook community. And here we have our special guest for today, Holly Larson. How are you doing, Holly?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me, Joyce.
It's a pleasure to have you, and I'm excited about the topic you're going to be sharing with us today. So let me see if we have anyone tuning in. If you are tuning in, feel free to add your comments or your questions throughout today's presentation, and I'm going to make sure that Holly gets to those questions as well. So we're planning to spend about 30 minutes in today's session. Wonderful. So Holly, why don't you tell us a little bit? Wait, let me go back. I always like to ask an ice-breaking question.
Good.
So I love to ask you, what is your favorite beverage? What do you enjoy drinking the most?
Oh my gosh. Well, I cannot get enough coffee. I hope, can I still call myself a new mom if I have a 2-year-old? Does that still count?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I drink lots and lots of coffee. And recently I am trying to drink like a little less wine. And so in the evening to wind down, I have been making Sleepy Time vanilla chamomile tea, but I've been making it iced. Ooh. And then mixing it with vanilla almond milk. And it's been really nice as I sit and read in the evening to sip on that little vanilla, a little bit sweet chamomile iced tea.
Oh, that sounds lovely. I started drinking this, I forgot what it's called. It's a yogi tea, and it has, I think it has cinnamon or chocolate, stress and sleep.
That sounds nice.
Yeah. So, awesome. I'm going to have to try it iced because I've been meaning to do it iced, and I've been drinking it warm so far.
The weather's so funny. It goes from warm to cool and sunny to rainy so quickly in these transitional seasons.
Right. And you said you're joining us from Ohio. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how the weather's like over there. We are finally getting some nice 60s weather in New Hampshire.
It is sunny today, and we're going to soak it in because tomorrow it's supposed to rain.
Oh, yeah. Wonderful. So before we get started, I just want to check that we're actually streaming. So I'm going to go ahead and open my YouTube page. So I'm getting a little note here that says that I'm having difficulty streaming. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this. We are live on YouTube. It's just the Facebook page, apparently. So I'm going to go ahead and copy the YouTube link into my Facebook community.
This feels very fancy. I don't know how to do all this cool recording that you're doing.
Okay, so if anyone is having trouble, I'm just going to say, join us here. And I'm going to go ahead and post on the page itself. Technology, it's a love-hate, right?
I know. It's great when it works and very frustrating when it does not.
Right. So if anyone is having trouble tuning in, you can catch today's live here. There we go. And post. Okay. So let's continue. And I can always edit this out later if we have to.
Perfect.
Okay. So Holly, I would love to hear how you got to where you are and how you became a nutrition copywriter. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your story?
I knew I wanted to be in nutrition since I was a really young kid. I'm one of 4 siblings, and I wanted to be a vegetarian from the tender age of 10. Although I have to say at age 10, I felt like a pretty big grown-up. But my mom, bless her, did not want to have to make a separate dinner for one of her 6 family members. And so she said no for 2 years. And I kept asking, I want to be a vegetarian. And finally, at age 12, she threw up her hands and said, fine, you can be a vegetarian, but you have to figure it out yourself. You have to do research and you have to cook your own food. I'm not doing it for you, which I love that that's how she handled it. So that's when I first started reading actual library books about nutrition, because this is pre-Google. And so I've just been really interested in food and how it helps us to grow and feel good from a young age. The flip side is it took me a little longer to figure out where in this field I was going to make my mark. Working in inpatient and clinical never really resonated with me. That wasn't the work I was meant to do. And it took kind of a little bit of trial and error. I've been a dietitian now for almost 20 years. But I started a small private practice about 10 years ago and just tried a bunch of stuff. And I spread myself pretty thin, which I guess you could say is a mistake, but I'm also proud of myself for just giving myself permission to be experimental and just kind of see what kind of work I enjoyed the most. And so I kind of just discovered by accident that I enjoy writing and I'm decent at it. And so eventually I took a great course to learn some good copywriting skills. I took another course to learn a lot more about SEO. And started my writing business while working a different full-time job to build my clientele, build skills, kind of develop that process, build up my savings, pay off some debt. And then eventually it came to a tipping point where I couldn't grow my business anymore because I didn't have time. And so it always feels scary to take the leap and quit a job. There's never a perfect time, but it was a good enough time. And that's what I've been doing for the past couple of years, writing for clients and then mentoring other dietitians who would like to learn how to write in a way that doesn't sound like a sciencey robot.
That's amazing. And I love how you shared that having that self-compassion really allowed you to be experimental and find like your passion, because so often we're really harsh on ourselves and we have these unrealistic expectations, and we also have a lot of fear of the unknown. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. And I know that in entrepreneurship, we talk a lot about having a niche, and it's the same with writing, having a niche. And while I do think there is merit in that, if you try and niche too quickly, you might miss discovering what is the work that you like to do best.
I agree.
So I think giving yourself permission to just try things and actually get a little more data. I think that's why like our internship is so important. It's really useful information to understand what kind of work you enjoy and what kind of work you don't enjoy. All that data is really important to guide having a career that's fulfilling.
I agree with you. Just collecting that data and looking at it from a non-judgmental perspective can really help us feel more informed to make a decision as to what we want to do, as opposed to letting it get to us and feel like, gosh, this is a failure, right? I failed at doing this because I wasn't successful of trying to meet the standard, as opposed to just saying, this is just data. I'm learning from what I'm doing. And based on this data, it sounds like I might want to try my hand out at this because I've had good luck with this, right? So wonderful. I feel like I was going to ask you something and I forgot what that was. It's going to come back to me. So is this something you're doing full time at the moment?
I work 4 days a week. I have a 2-year-old son, and so he's in daycare Monday through Thursdays, and then he and I spend Fridays together.
It sounds lovely. Okay, so I want to just go ahead and say I am the first one to admit that when it comes to writing, that like robotic writing that you mentioned, the very scientific writing, that's me. And that is what I'm really working hard on, so that I'm not sounding so clinical, because once you've been studying for so long, and I went through the PhD, so I had to write a very long dissertation that had to be at a very high academic standard of writing. So when we try to write more personally, when we try to put more of our voice into that type of writing, our professor's like, no, you got to make this more formal. So then that was kind of ingrained in us. So I'm glad that you're going to be talking about how we can make our writing more accessible as dietitians who want to use writing as not only a tool, but as a means to do what we do in the work that we decide to do. So take it away. It's all yours. What do you have for us today?
So I'm offering advice and tips and tricks today for dietitians to improve their writing. And improve to me means a couple of things, which is doing the work that we want to do, which is to help people. It's to help our business grow. So good writing accomplishes those things. And so in this format of entrepreneurship, our audience is different than in academia. So the writing that you did for your dissertation was in the voice and tone that it needed to be in that format. There's nothing wrong with that formal style of writing. It just doesn't work as well in the purpose of entrepreneurship and getting clients and that kind of work. But for all of us dietitians who have been through a rigorous training program, that's the kind of writing that we're taught. But when we are trying to connect with people we're trying to attract to our business, it needs to be a little different. So my first tip is actually, doesn't seem like a writing tip, but it's actually to focus on your mindset, to remind ourselves that we are experts already. We don't need to know every single thing on a topic before we start writing about it. And our mindset can trick us a little bit and make it seem like we have imposter syndrome. And so that can make us dial up the formality because it's kind of like a coping mechanism to make us sound more professional if we might feel a little scared or a little vulnerable to put something out in the wide world of the internet. But I like to say that a draft is not helping our ideal client. We have to click publish. And so just working on your mindset, it's continuous work. I'm not done working on my mindset. We're all working on it. But just to remind ourselves that we're here to help. We're experts. We don't know it all. We don't need to know it all. We can still help people. So starting with that place of a nice balance of confidence and humility that we have stuff to offer now and we're going to keep growing will show up in the way your writing sounds. My next tip is to know your audience. So it can take a while to kind of find that sweet spot of the work that you want to do. But once you're there and have your niche, it makes it so much easier to write. I like to use the analogy of snacks. So as dietitians, we're like, we want to help absolutely everybody. But if you tried to write a blog that helped someone in a nursing home who has unintended weight loss, a busy professional who's traveling 4 days a week and needs snacks, and a preschool program who needs their morning snacks, those are all very different. So if you are trying to write a blog post that had tips that might be applicable to all three of those very different audiences, it's not going to sound good and it's not going to be very helpful. But if you decide in your niche that you really like working with preschoolers or you really like working with busy professionals who travel a lot, knowing exactly who you're speaking to makes your writing so much more clear, so much more helpful, and you're more of an expert because you're not trying to help everybody. So speaking to fewer people, your exact people who you love to help, makes your writing so much better.
I like that. And I'm going to go ahead and add that it's okay if you switch niches, right? I said that right.
Mm-hmm.
You're not stuck to a particular ideal client. You can figure out who you want to work with, who you enjoy working with, and it's okay to try something out and then be like, I actually prefer to work with this type of client. And then you start speaking to a different niche, and that's perfectly fine. You're not stuck. You're not boxed in.
I agree. My next tip is, in order to be a more effective writer, we have to separate research, writing, and editing. And what we tend to do, especially as beginner writers, or until I get my hands on coaching you, we need to separate those processes. We need to gather our information that's using one part of your brain. Kind of getting that draft out there is next. And don't try to edit it. It's kind of like spring cleaning and getting your closet organized. You can't really figure out like what the right size container is and like what things need to get rid of until you just kind of have it all out there. It's great to delete things that don't belong, but we kind of need to get the big picture first before we can tighten things up and remove and switch around and check spelling. So just do different processes at different time, and your writing overall will feel much more fluid and take less time overall. We tend to think that with multitasking, we're saving time, but really we just tend to be spinning our wheels if we try and do all of those things at the same time.
Okay, so let me see if I got this clear. You're saying that the research, the writing, and the editing are 3 different processes, and we should treat them as such. So what do you recommend we do to separate, for example, the writing from the editing? Should we let it rest for a day or two, or how can we come back with like, fresh eyes and a fresh mind to reread something to try to revise it or edit it?
When I'm actually in the writing part, the first thing that I do is to remind myself that it's a first draft. And I don't know how you feel about curse words, but I usually say SFD for shitty first draft. And that really just takes the pressure off. We're such perfectionists as a field that if you go in there thinking, I am writing my final version of this thing, that's like too much pressure to even get started. So just be like, it's just a draft. It's just a blog. It's not my doctoral dissertation. It's a blog. And just kind of like take a deep breath and take down the anxiety a little bit. We can always change it. We can always update it. We can delete it. And just to relax a little bit and try to have some fun with it.
Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, you're recommending we write that first draft, and it's not going to be ideal or perfect by any means, but should we just put it out into the world, or should we come back later and like edit it?
Edit it. I like to limit how much time you can work on a draft, because otherwise it's kind of like that child's book, if you give a mouse a cookie, and we can just keep polishing and tweaking and adjusting words until the end of time. But like I mentioned earlier, a draft is not helping our ideal client. A draft is not helping to grow our audience and our reach. We have to click publish. So once we have made that first draft, I love to give it at least a day. But when I'm working on the first draft of something, I like to limit it to an hour. And just to get as many words out as possible, because it's always easier to edit words than a blank paper or a blank document, since we're all online. So then another draft or two on another day or two. And honestly, you'll probably be surprised. We're like, oh, it actually isn't all that bad when you look at it with fresh eyes, when you go back to edit.
I like that. And that kind of removes that pressure of having it be great, right? But also many of us, myself included, could fall into like analysis paralysis, where like you're seeing this big overwhelming task and you just put it off, and then you're not going to do it, and then you end up doing it so quickly you don't really pay attention, enough effort as it should require. But I like having that structure of, okay, just 1 hour, it is what it is, let's just put something down as much as I can, and then we're going to look at it again a different day.
And it just helps everything to flow and to have writing not feel like such a drag. But the thing is, it's a new skill. So as much as we are experts in nutrition, we might be beginner writers, and that's okay. We get better and more competent with practice, and we get practice by doing, not thinking about it. And then if you're in a space to invest in writing, I'll talk at the end about my course and my mentorship program for anyone who's interested in investing in these skills.
Okay, wonderful. So we have the 3 tips. I see there are some people live, so I want to open it up to questions. If anyone's watching live and you have any questions, please go ahead and add them to the comments, and I'll make sure Holly gets your questions. So in the meantime, while people who are watching, they post any questions they might have, I love to ask you, when you have, let's say, writing that's very technical, how would you approach it to make it more accessible, more, I guess, relatable?
We're in a time where we have more AI tools than ever before, and we're kind of controversial. I think of AI just as that. It's a tool. I do use AI for some of my writing. It kind of depends on the client and their voice and if it would be helpful or not, but they can be a time saver. But in a time where there is so much AI content out there, it's the storytelling that really can set good blogs apart. And that's also what can infuse your personality and let people see themselves in your writing, which is really powerful. So don't just explain the thing, explain what it's been like to help other clients through it, explain what your own personal experience is with this thing if you have it. And that storytelling and social proof really can make your writing stand apart, even if you're using AI to support the work that you're doing. I also love a tool called Hemingway, the Hemingway editor. There's a free version of the tool, and you can copy and paste chunks of text in there, and it will give you a grade, like a grade level of how complex your writing is. And we tend to make things way more complicated than we need to. And again, that can kind of circle back to imposter syndrome and just leaning into the style of writing that we're taught in academia. But I challenge you to say that if you can't explain it in a way that a 6th grader would understand, you might not understand it as well as you think you do. So sometimes people push back on that and they say, well, you're dumbing it down. As if you shouldn't be. You're just explaining things in a way that's accessible. And our goal as dietitians is to help people, to empower people, to help them to lead healthier lives. And if we confuse them, we're not doing that.
I agree. I love that. The 6th grade reading level is key to make it any type of writing or presentations really accessible, right? I like that. Again, if anyone's watching, if you have any questions, just drop them into the comments, and I'm going to make sure that Holly gets them. So I do have another question. When you are trying to figure out how to speak to your ideal audience, what do you think would be some sample questions you might want to ask yourself that can help you get into writing that can connect better with your audience?
It's a good question. Language is such a powerful tool. And I don't even mean like English versus Spanish. I mean, like, what is the lingo of your ideal client? So if you want to help new mothers, there's a specific vocabulary around breastfeeding and bottle feeding and latching and like all of this kind of vocabulary that if you haven't been in that world yourself, you might not know. But understanding some of that language helps to make you an insider. Because if you don't know that lingo, then you're an outsider. It's like me trying to understand Gen Z and some of their slang.
Yeah.
Like, I very much am an outsider because I don't know that lingo. But if you can hang out in Facebook groups and read other stuff read by people who you want to help, that's a great way to learn some of that language so that you can integrate it into the writing that you make. And one actually really good way to learn writing, and this might be a surprising tip, but is to actually write down things by hand.
Okay.
So that's one of the things that I have in my course, because that's how I was taught to be a good writer too, is that to read like some of the really sleazy, I would never want to write this way, and to write down the text by hand for half an hour. And it helps you to understand why that writing feels kind of gross and salesy and we don't want to repeat it. And then to do the same thing, but with really good writing, like really warm and inviting and understandable, to write down those chunks of text by hand, because it just helps your brain to understand it differently than just reading and skimming or highlighting.
Okay, so it's the same idea behind practicing something, right? It's almost like the role playing when you're enhancing your counseling skills.
Exactly.
So that you're getting your brain rewired to respond in a certain way.
And that's also how I help. To me, as a ghostwriter for other dietitians, is a little bit like dress up. I'm not writing as me, Holly Larson. I'm writing as my client, so that when they publish the content that I create for them, it feels authentic to them. So I'll do the same thing. I'll be listening to their Instagram reels and paying attention to the language and the ways that they explain things to their audience, and hand copy blogs that they have written before hiring me, so that as I make new content for them, it feels authentic to their voice, their vibe, and just makes them really confident in hiring me as a writer, because I take the time to do that homework.
That's genius, because so many times we see other writing and it sounds good to us and we're trying to imitate it, but it doesn't click, right? First of all, it's not our voice. So it's really hard to be able to do something when we're just reading it. Wonderful. And that applies to anything, right? Like you're learning a new skill, learning a new language. You're not just going to read it and say, okay, I think I got this. But you're going to have to practice it.
You have to actually practice.
Bummer, right? Reality.
Practice does help when you're practicing the right stuff.
Right. So we do have a question here from Sharon. Sharon's asking, do you have any tips on just getting started? Do you use an outline, key points, or just start writing? Great question, Sharon. Thank you.
For a blog, probably, do you think?
Probably, yeah.
So blogs are a great way to expand the library of content on your website. Good blogs, meaning they help your business to grow, help to attract new people to your website. Start with keyword research, which that's kind of one of those areas that can feel a little intimidating, that you just can't ignore it. You have to learn some. So I don't write a blog without having a keyword research reason for covering content, because otherwise it's not really going to help your traffic grow.
Mm-hmm.
So what I like to do is to look at what blogs are already on page one for that. And that can help give me some ideas about what kind of things I might cover in this blog to make it comprehensive. So it's not to say I'm copying, but just to be like, what kind of things are people talking about, so that when I write my own version of the answer to this question, I'm answering the whole question, because good blogs are thorough, they're complete. And then how I guide people through writing, how can we do a draft in an hour? I like to start with a title, give myself a deadline, 1 or 2 minutes. It's just a draft. And then I like to do my outline with H2 headlines. So that's when you're in a Google document, next to where you can pick the name of your font, you can change it from normal text to H2 subheading. And that has special code. So the words are bigger, but it also tells Google these words are more important. It's the outline of the post. So I like to take a few minutes spending the outline. So I'm no longer looking at a blank page because that's intimidating, even for an experienced writer. So I want to get some words on there as quick as I can. And then I don't necessarily start at the beginning. That can be too much pressure. Like, what is that first sentence? Like, dun, dun, dun. Too high pressure. So instead, I look at the outline that I just made and I say, which section feels the easiest, the fastest to write? And I do that section. Eye on the prize. And then I give myself about 15 minutes to fill in the rest of the draft, and that's it. So it's like cat typing at a keyboard meme, as fast as I can. And then I work on the call to action. Every blog should end with a call to action. One call to action, not a buffet of 37 choices, because people just get confused. Right. But if someone has gotten all the way through your blog and they're still reading, they're interested, so they want to know what to do next. So maybe in this blog post, it's download my freebie. Maybe on this blog post, it's here's how to book your free discovery call, or whatever language that you use to talk about that phone call. Or maybe it's follow me on Instagram. Whatever one thing you want people to do at the end of this blog post. And then I shut it and I come back another day and do the editing.
Okay, so you edit a published blog already. You can always go back and fix some things, change some things. So it's a lower pressure activity. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. So after doing the draft, I come back another day and edit. I always hire a proofreader, and I build that into my pricing as a copywriter so that I can, and that I'm not a great speller. And like most of us, I read what I meant to write, not necessarily what I actually wrote. So the proofreader catches those things. And then once it's ready, done, then we can publish it.
Okay, that's wonderful insights. So you do ask someone else to have a second set of eyes. In this case, it's someone who does that as their job, so they're a professional proofreader, and that does help. I just have one last question. If anyone else has a question, please drop it into the comments. Do you have any suggestions for resources or tech that you might recommend? I know you mentioned the Hemingway editor. That sounds really neat. Anything else that you found useful or your clients find useful?
I have a couple of tools. So keyword research and just SEO research in general is really important. The tool that I use is called SEMrush, SEM Rush, which is a more robust tool. It's a little more expensive if you have unlimited searches, but they do also have a free version where you're limited to 10 searches a day, which that's really helpful. So SEMrush is my favorite keyword research tool. I love Share-Through Headline Analyzer. You can pop your draft title in there and it will give you a score. Wow. So you can kind of play around with, like, there are some rules to titles. Ideally, you're using your keyword in there, for example. And you always want to be understandable more than cute. So if people aren't understanding what the value might be in your blog post, they're not going to read it. Mm-hmm. So it needs to be clear. But that's kind of a fun tool to play around with to tweak your title.
Nice.
And then you really shouldn't have to pay for images. It's nice to have images in your content, but there's a lot of free resources. The one that I use the most often is called Unsplash. So it's unsplash.com, and you can download. They have paid images too, but they have a huge library of free images that you can use.
Okay, and there's a very newbie question when you use images from Canva per se, are you allowed to use those for your blogs? Okay.
I have the pro account, so I'm not sure how many images are available with the free account, but they're there to be used.
Okay, wonderful. Because I love their images. Saves a lot of time too. We have another question. Anna saying, how do you know what your niche is?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. You have to try things, and then it's kind of data gathering of trying things and listening to your gut and saying, does this work make me feel excited? And does it make me feel like I've helped people? Am I on this planet doing work that helps people to live a better life? You know, I didn't become a dietitian to become a writer. This was kind of a surprise to me as much as everyone else. But I know that when I'm mentoring my writers through my RD blog club, which is my program, and we have a writing session and I hang up, I know that in my heart of hearts, I feel really excited and happy. And even though I'm a tired new mom, I always feel energized after those calls. So it's paying attention to the signals that your body is giving you as you try different kinds of work.
That sounds like a great response. Thank you so much, Holly. That was a great question, Anna.
Thank you.
Okay, so then before we end, I'd love to ask you, what are you working on? What are your projects, or what do you want to share with our viewers today?
Thanks for asking. I have a couple of things to tell everyone about. So for anyone who is interested in learning how to be a better writer, I do have a course. It's called the Writing Course for Nutrition Professionals. It's a self-paced course, so you can fit it around your schedule, whatever that looks like, working through the modules. But I also have live writing workshops and office hours and different opportunities to actually interact and be accountable to working through that. Because like most human beings, we need accountability. And I've given Joyce a coupon. She has her own affiliate link for my course with a coupon to save $300. But the bonus I wanted to tell you guys about is that if you choose to enroll in the course right now and use that coupon, I'm going to offer a bonus of reviewing something that you write and giving you some feedback so that you can learn more. I have learned so much from getting feedback on my own writing. So I wanted to offer that for anyone else who's interested in joining. I also have a mentorship program called the RD Blog Club. And I made this program because it's what I wish I'd had when I first was an entrepreneur. As you're just kind of like trying to figure out all the things of running a business, there are so many irons you can have in the fire. And the first thing to go on the back burner is your own content. I'll work on that tomorrow, next week, and it just never gets done. But SEO is a long game and you need to publish consistent, high quality writing in order to grow your traffic. So the blog club is my way of supporting you through writing one good blog a month because I give you deadlines. I'm reviewing your blog really thoroughly. We have live writing workshops together each month so that you have actual time on your calendar to work on your writing. And then you're hanging out with a small group of fellow entrepreneurs who are rooting for each other and celebrating wins together, which is just so nice when I love entrepreneurship, but it can be lonely. So it's that community for people who are looking for that. And as a bonus, if you join as an annual member for the blog club, I give you my writing course for free.
That's amazing. These are really valuable services you're providing for those who really want to go like more serious into writing, because like you said, many times that falls through the cracks, like, oh, we're going to get to it tomorrow. And when it comes to writing, if there's no accountability, it can be really hard to just like set your own deadline to do things. So having that accountability, that support, and an extra set of eyes on your material, your content, can be such a great way to accelerate your improvements. So I like to think of writing as the sister of counseling, right? So both under communication, and ultimately communication is how we do what we do as dietitians. So I think it's a great idea to be able to support dietitians who also want to enhance their own writing. Yes, so I'm going to share the links that Holly made for me. If anyone has any questions, how can they get in touch with you, Holly?
So my website is hollylarsonwrites.com. Anyone is welcome to book a call if they have questions about what might be the right fit. Or if you're like, heck, I have zero interest in learning how to write, I'd rather just hire you as a ghostwriter. Also fair. You can make an appointment to chat with me. But if you just kind of wanted to talk through any of this in more detail to find out what might be the right fit for you, I'm all ears. I'm not high pressure. I'm never going to want to put pressure on someone to buy something if it's not the right fit. So I like to think of them as a strategy call so that you and I can just kind of talk through, where are you at? What are your goals? What's your bandwidth? And try and find the best solution. I also love networking with other dietitian entrepreneurs. So if I think someone else might be a better fit, I'm happy to refer you. I am really into collaboration, not competition. And I think the more that we network and root for each other and raise each other up, we all win. So
I love that.
me and my approach. So my email address is holly@hollylarsonwrites.com. I have a contact form on my website. My Instagram is @hollylarsonwrites. You can send me a DM. So I'm here and happy to chat.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you for those viewers who tuned in. If you asked questions, thank you for sending in your questions. And if you're catching the replay, if you have any questions, is it okay, Holly, if I tag you on the
Absolutely. I'm here.
Facebook community? Wonderful. So thank you so much, Holly. This has been really wonderful. You gave us some really great insights. You went like above and beyond, the 3 mistakes and the tips to become a better writer for dietitians and nutrition professionals. So I really do appreciate you being here. And that's all that I have for today.
Thank you so much.
Take care, everyone. Let me end the stream. Bye.